Ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about transformation in Japanese anime, we often think of characters gaining strength through training arcs, awakening hidden powers, or unlocking legendary abilities. But Vinland Saga delivers something far more haunting and realistic through Prince Canute. His transformation is not about muscles or weapons, it is about belief, fear, and the terrifying power of choice. Canute's journey from a weak, trembling boy to a ruthless king is one of the most psychologically intense character evolutions in anime history. Prince Canute's story begins in a world that has no mercy for weakness, and from the very first moment he appears in Vinland Saga, it is painfully clear that he does not belong in it. Surrounded by warriors who measure life by strength, honor, and the number of enemies they have slain, Canute exists like a fragile flame in a violent storm. He is not raised to fight, command, or dominate. Instead, he is raised to pray, to obey, and to endure. This upbringing shapes him into a boy whose survival depends not on action, but on avoidance. Canute's physical frailty immediately separates him from the Viking ideal of masculinity. He does not wield weapons with confidence, nor does he display courage on the battlefield. His posture, his soft voice, and his hesitant movements all communicate fear. In Japanese anime, weakness is often portrayed as something that can be overcome through training or emotional growth, but in Canute's case, his weakness feels deeply rooted. It is not something he simply lacks, it is something he has been molded into by his environment and upbringing. Religion plays a central role in shaping Canute's early personality. He clings to God not as a source of strength, but as an escape from responsibility. Prayer becomes his refuge, a way to believe that suffering has meaning and that justice will come without him having to act. This faith is passive. Canute does not believe that humans should change the world, he believes that God will eventually correct it. In anime storytelling, this kind of belief often sets a character up for a painful awakening, because the world they live in does not operate on divine fairness. Canute's dependence on Ragnar further reinforces his fragility. Ragnar does not simply protect Canute physically, he shields him emotionally from reality. He speaks for him, decides for him, and ensures that Canute never has to confront the harsh truths of leadership or war. While this protection comes from love, it ultimately weakens Canute. He is never forced to grow, never challenged to face fear head-on. Instead, his fear is preserved, carefully wrapped in safety. In a brutal anime world like Vinland Saga, this kind of shelter is dangerous. Emotionally, Canute is isolated. He does not form bonds with warriors or soldiers. He does not laugh with them, train with them, or share their values. This isolation deepens his sense of helplessness. He watches violence unfold around him but feels powerless to stop it or even understand it. Unlike characters who are hardened by trauma, Canute is softened by it. He withdraws inward, hoping that silence will protect him from the cruelty of the world. What makes Canute's fragility especially tragic is that it is not rooted in selfishness or cruelty. He is not arrogant or malicious. In fact, he is gentle, empathetic, and deeply uncomfortable with violence. These traits would be virtues in another world, but in Vinland Saga's Viking era, they are treated as flaws. This contrast highlights one of the anime's core themes: morality does not guarantee survival. The world does not reward kindness unless it is backed by power. Canute's early belief system also robs him of agency. He does not see himself as someone who can shape the future. Instead, he believes his role is to endure suffering and wait for salvation. This mindset keeps him emotionally frozen. While other characters grow through pain, Canute remains static, locked in fear and dependency. In anime terms, he is a character who has not yet awakened, not because he lacks potential, but because he has never been forced to confront reality without protection. The presence of warriors like Thorfinn and Askeladd further emphasizes Canute's fragility. He is surrounded by people who act decisively, kill without hesitation, and accept violence as part of life. Compared to them, Canute feels small and insignificant. This comparison silently erodes his self-worth. He begins to see himself as useless, a burden rather than a leader. This internal shame becomes a quiet but powerful force within him. Ultimately, Canute's fragile beginning is not a weakness in storytelling, it is the foundation of his transformation. Vinland Saga carefully builds him as a boy who is emotionally unprepared for the world, protected to the point of paralysis, and clinging to faith as a substitute for strength. This makes his later evolution all the more impactful. His weakness is not meant to be admired, it is meant to be understood. Because before Canute can become a king, he must first be broken, and his fragile beginning ensures that when that breaking point comes, it will change him forever. The turning point in Prince Canute's life is not marked by a glorious battle or a heroic victory, but by loss, silence, and emotional collapse. In true Japanese anime fashion, his transformation begins not with strength, but with despair. When the fragile world that had been carefully built around him finally shatters, Canute is forced to confront reality without protection for the first time. This moment becomes the emotional crucible that reshapes his entire identity. The death of Ragnar is the single most devastating event in Canute's early life. Ragnar was not just a guardian, he was Canute's voice, his shield, and his emotional anchor. When Ragnar is taken from him, Canute loses the one person who filtered the world on his behalf. Suddenly, there is no one to soften the cruelty, no one to speak in his place, and no one to decide what is best for him. In anime storytelling, the loss of a mentor often sparks growth, but for Canute, it initially triggers complete emotional collapse. After Ragnar's death, Canute does not become angry or vengeful. Instead, he becomes hollow. His faith, which once gave him comfort, begins to feel meaningless. He prays, but no answer comes. He believes in God, yet the world continues to drown in blood. This contradiction shakes him deeply. For the first time, Canute begins to question whether divine love truly exists, or if it is merely an illusion created to help humans endure suffering. This existential crisis is a defining moment. Unlike warriors who grow through physical hardship, Canute grows through psychological pain. He realizes that praying for peace while doing nothing only allows violence to continue. This realization is brutal, because it forces him to accept responsibility. In anime narratives, awakening often comes when a character realizes that no one is coming to save them. For Canute, this moment arrives when he understands that God will not intervene, and that humans alone shape the world. Askeladd plays a crucial role in pushing Canute toward this awakening. Unlike Ragnar, Askeladd offers no comfort. He does not protect Canute from truth, he throws him directly into it. Through cold words and harsh logic, Askeladd exposes the hypocrisy of passive faith. He forces Canute to confront the idea that love without action is meaningless. In a world ruled by power, ideals must be enforced, or they are crushed. This confrontation shatters Canute's old identity. The gentle boy who believed in salvation through endurance begins to fade. In his place, a new understanding forms, one rooted in control rather than hope. Canute realizes that if the world is built on violence, then peace cannot exist without authority. This realization is not empowering, it is terrifying. He understands that to protect others, he must become someone capable of commanding fear. Emotionally, Canute reaches a point of detachment. He stops crying, stops praying, and stops seeking comfort. This emotional shutdown is a common anime transformation trait, symbolizing the death of innocence. Canute does not become cruel overnight, but he becomes distant. His expressions harden, his voice steadies, and his presence begins to command attention. This shift is subtle, yet powerful. It signals that Canute has accepted the world as it is, not as he wishes it to be. What makes this transformation compelling is that it is not framed as heroic. Canute does not smile or gain confidence in a traditional sense. Instead, he becomes heavy, burdened by knowledge and responsibility. He understands that leadership requires sacrifice, not just of others, but of one's own ideals. His new worldview is built on the belief that love must be enforced through power, even if that power is stained with blood. In anime terms, this is the moment Canute awakens, but unlike typical awakenings fueled by rage or determination, his is fueled by despair and clarity. He accepts that kindness alone cannot change the world. To create heaven on earth, he must first dominate hell. This mindset marks the birth of the Ruthless king, not because Canute desires cruelty, but because he believes it is necessary. By the end of this phase, Canute is no longer the boy who hides behind others. He has not yet become a full ruler, but his soul has shifted. The fear that once controlled him is replaced by resolve. He has stared into the emptiness left by loss and chosen not to retreat, but to rise. In that silent decision, Prince Canute's true transformation begins. Prince Canute's true evolution reaches its most unsettling phase when he begins to understand power, not as brute force, but as control over people, fear, and destiny itself. This stage of his transformation is where the boy fully separates from the king he is becoming. In animated storytelling, this is the moment when a character stops reacting to the world and starts shaping it. For Canute, this realization is slow, deliberate, and deeply disturbing. After his emotional awakening, Canute no longer views the world through the lens of innocence or faith. He begins to observe it like a strategist. He watches how armies move, how leaders command obedience, and how fear silences resistance. Where he once saw chaos, he now sees patterns. This shift in perception marks the birth of a ruler's mind. He understands that strength alone does not create kings, authority does. And authority is built on belief, image, and inevitability. In Japanese anime, some of the most dangerous characters are not the loudest or strongest, but the calmest. Canute becomes exactly that. His quiet nature, once a sign of weakness, transforms into an advantage. People lean in when he speaks. His words carry weight because they are rare and deliberate. This change is subtle but powerful, showing that Canute has learned how silence itself can be a weapon. Askeladd's influence continues to echo in Canute's thoughts, even when Askeladd is not present. Canute begins to understand that ideals without power are fantasies. If he wants to create a world without suffering, he must first conquer the systems that create it. This belief hardens his resolve. He no longer seeks approval or moral comfort. Instead, he seeks results. In anime terms, this is the moment he abandons the hero's path and chooses the ruler's burden. Canute's philosophy becomes increasingly radical. He decides that love cannot exist freely in a violent world, it must be enforced. This idea is chilling, yet internally consistent. He believes that by becoming the ultimate authority, he can eliminate the need for endless war. But this also means accepting that he will be hated, feared, and possibly condemned by history. Canute accepts this fate willingly. He is no longer afraid of becoming a villain if it means achieving peace. This internal decision marks the death of the gentle prince. Emotionally, Canute distances himself from others. He no longer relies on companionship or reassurance. His empathy does not disappear, but it becomes controlled, buried beneath layers of calculation. He feels pain, but he does not allow it to guide him. This emotional discipline is what separates him from traditional heroes and aligns him with the archetype of the tragic king. Visually and narratively, anime often uses body language to reflect transformation. Canute stands straighter. His gaze becomes direct. His presence changes the atmosphere of every room he enters. Warriors who once ignored him now listen. Leaders who underestimated him begin to hesitate. This is not because Canute threatens them openly, but because he projects inevitability. He carries himself like someone who believes the world will bend, and that belief becomes contagious. What makes this phase of Canute's rise so compelling is that it is rooted in sacrifice. He sacrifices his faith, his innocence, and his emotional freedom. He chooses a lonely path, knowing that true power isolates. In doing so, he becomes a mirror of the world he wishes to control, cold, structured, and unforgiving. This contradiction defines him. He seeks peace through domination, love through fear, and order through cruelty. Canute is no longer transforming, he has transformed. The weak boy has vanished completely. In his place stands a king who understands that to rule the world, one must first abandon the comfort of being human. This is not a triumphant rise, it is a tragic ascension, perfectly aligned with the dark, philosophical soul of Vinland Saga. By the final stage of Prince Canute's journey, his transformation is complete, not in the way heroes usually ascend, but in the way rulers are forged through loss, conviction, and irreversible choices. This phase represents the full embodiment of his new identity, where the boy he once was no longer exists even in memory. In Japanese anime storytelling, this is the moment when a character stops questioning their path and begins to walk it without hesitation. Canute now moves with absolute certainty. Doubt, once his greatest weakness, has been replaced by unwavering resolve. He no longer debates morality in emotional terms, instead, he measures it by outcomes. Every decision is weighed against the future he envisions, a world unified under his rule, where chaos is eliminated by force if necessary. This mindset reflects a common anime theme, the idea that peace achieved through mercy is fragile, while peace enforced by power endures. What makes Canute terrifying is not cruelty for its own sake, but his willingness to bear it. He does not enjoy suffering, nor does he glorify violence. Instead, he accepts it as a tool. In his mind, someone must carry the sins of the world so others can live without them. And if that someone must be him, he will not turn away. This self-imposed damnation transforms him into a tragic king, one who chooses to be cursed so his people do not have to be. Canute's leadership style now contrasts sharply with traditional warrior kings. He does not rely on physical strength or battlefield dominance. His power lies in manipulation, authority, and psychological control. He understands loyalty, fear, and hope as currencies. He knows when to inspire and when to intimidate. In anime terms, he becomes a chess master, moving people like pieces while never raising his voice. This calculated calm makes him more dangerous than any berserker. Emotionally, Canute has sealed himself off. He allows no attachments to weaken him. Love, friendship, and compassion still exist within him, but they are buried beneath responsibility. This emotional isolation is the true cost of his crown. While others see a king, Canute sees a prisoner, bound by the destiny he chose. He cannot step away, cannot hesitate, and cannot afford remorse. His humanity survives only as a memory, one he refuses to revisit. This stage of Canute's story forces the audience to confront uncomfortable questions. Is a peaceful world worth the sacrifice of freedom? Can tyranny ever be justified if it ends suffering? Vinland Saga does not give easy answers, and Canute himself becomes the embodiment of that moral ambiguity. He is neither pure villain nor traditional hero. He exists in the gray space that anime often explores at its deepest level, the space where ideals clash with reality. Visually, Canute's presence now commands silence. Rooms grow tense when he enters. Conversations pause. His authority is unquestioned, not because of fear alone, but because of belief. People sense that he will not waver. In anime storytelling, this kind of presence signifies ultimate transformation. He no longer needs to prove himself. His will alone defines the direction of the world around him. Prince Canute stands as one of the most complex figures in Vinland Saga. His journey is not about victory, but about burden. He becomes a symbol of what it truly means to rule, to sacrifice one's soul in exchange for control over fate. And in doing so, he proves that the most dangerous kings are not those who crave power, but those who believe they must wield it for the sake of everyone else. In the end, Prince Canute's transformation is not just the story of a weak boy becoming a powerful king, it is the story of innocence being crushed under the weight of reality. Vinland Saga shows us that true power does not always roar on the battlefield, sometimes it sits quietly on a throne, carrying unbearable responsibility. Canute's journey forces us to question whether a peaceful world can truly be built without blood on its foundation, and whether a ruler can save others without losing himself in the process. He does not become strong because he wants power. He becomes strong because he believes someone must shoulder the darkness so the world can move forward. Through fear, loss, and unbreakable resolve, Canute evolves into a king who rules not with love, but with conviction, proving that leadership in a brutal world demands a terrible price. Prince Canute stands as a haunting reminder that in the world of Vinland Saga, the crown does not create monsters, it reveals the cost of trying to save the world by ruling it.